Learning a block Gemara. Today's daf is daf mem, and we're gonna talk about when you mine something from somebody, and we learned before how you have to, take care of it, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what about if something is, and then we spoke about whether you have to take care of things if it's starting to deteriorate. Do you have to maintain it? You have to sell it, or just let it go? We made a difference whether it's natural attrition or whether it's actually losing more than its natural way. So now we're going to learn in the Mishnah, when you return the item, what happens if it did lose some along the way because it's a perishable? Do you have to reimburse the mafkid? How's it work? Obviously, it depends if it's your fault or not, or depends if you don't know. So let's go through it. A mafkid paid as chaveda, the Mishnah. A mafkid paid as chaveda if you store fruits by a friend. Now we're talking about a case here. Obviously, if someone gave you something to watch for him, and then after a month he comes to pick it up, I don't care. We're just up to the Mishnah right now on Daf Mem Amud Aleph, and we're learning about what your responsibilities are if it sort of starts rotting away. So if it's sitting, and you gave in a barrel a bunch of fruits, and then who cares how much it rotted? You give it back the barrel; it's his. You didn't do anything. Our situation here is that he gave you some fruits and you mixed it with your own. And even mixed with your own, if you knew the percentage, then when he comes to pick it up, let's say a third of the is your own and 2/3 is the mafkid. So then you work out whatever's left over. A third goes back, you take for yourself, and 2/3 goes to mafkid. We're talking about you mix it with your fruits, and you mixed it with your fruits, but you took some along the way, and now you don't have no idea, how much of it remaining is yours and how much is balbas. What do you do now? So said the Mishnah, let's say Reuben stores or deposits fruits by Shimon. When you give it back to him, you work out, you calculate what the average rate of attrition is, and that is what you pay back. For example, when it comes to wheat and it comes to oidas rice. Now Rashi here says oidas is millet, and Rashi says doichin is another kind of millet. This is the big machlekes we had in Taisus and Brachas. According to Taisus, oidas is rice, and doichin is millet, and that's why, because we have a suffix, if oidas is rice or millet, that's why we make all these different brachas for rice. Exactly, but over here they all say it's millet. Is wheat or rice, then the average attrition is tisha chatzikav. A kohen has 30 saw. Every saw has 6 kavin, so there's 180 kavin to a kohen. And here you have 9 half kavin, so there's 360 half kavins. And you have 9, so that is roughly a quarter, that is roughly 2.5%. What about when it comes to barley and it comes to millet or another kind of millet? Tisha kavin l'kor. Here already it's 9 kavin to 100, it's 5%. Lekusmin to spelt, ulazera pishtan to flax seeds, shalosh that's 10%. They rot really quickly. Hakoil lefi hamida, everything goes according to the measure. And obviously you have three cars, and everything's proportional. And means every year this is what you expect to lose. So if by you 2 years, then you double this, and so on. Rabbi Chanuri says, that's opinion number one. Rabbi Chanuri says, I don't care how many current you have. You think the mice care how many everything you have? They're hungry. They want to eat a certain amount. If it's 1 quart or 10 quart, they don't eat more because it's 10 quart. So therefore, it should be the same amount. It makes no difference how many there are. They'll eat the same amount. All you calculate is 1 quart. I don't care how many you have. Now, Taisus brings to the Shali a fascinating expression. I'll quote you this Taisus here. So Taisus, so what Rabbanan explains, Rabbi has a good word. Says Taisus, v'chimach ichpazlu. Says Taisus, hani achbari l'shiyah. These mice are reshayim. Why? Tatchamin, even when they see a lot, I don't know that they go ahead and eat somebody else's tfur. They have a party. They call all their friends. The ugly and mine, these mice are reshayim. Every expression, hani achbari l'shiyah. Okay. Anyway. Okay, right? Exactly. Anyway, you have a party, you have to invite others. That's the bottom line. Why the Rishayim is because someone else is full. Says the Mishnah further, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Im hoisa mida meruba. Rabbi Yehuda says, he has a third opinion. He says, if it's a mida meruba, that means that if it was a big measure, we'll see more later how much is a big measure, then ain't no you don't have to at all supplement whatever went missing. You know why? The nation might see this. As we'll see later, there's certain times of the year where it dries up, it shrivels, and certain times of the years that it swells. And if you give it back to him at a time when it swells, he gave it at a time when it's dry. You give back at the time when it swells, so the swelling compensates for the loss of the mice, the shrinkage. And the big machlek is showing you whether the Chacham agree with Rabbi Yehuda or they're arguing with Rabbi Yehuda as well. Says the Gemara.
Shrinkage definitely from what mice are taking, or could it also be just
atmospheric?
Goes off. It seems from the response that's what we're saying.
Yeah, we're talking. That's what I mean. Either mice or natural nutrition that are rats on the side. But when the rats, it's only the. You're right. So it sounds like our primary concern is mice, because they will store it in a storehouse where it's cold, it's cool, so they're just sort of, they don't have any windows. Telling about it is rice. You lose a lot more than this 2.5%. When does it lose more than 2.5% if it's still in its husk? And the wind comes and over time, it gets ripe and it blows it away, so then it loses a lot more than 2.5%. But we're talking about it's peeled already, it's the rice grains, so you lose a lot less. Talking about further, the kusmin is at a pishn gimel saying the kud. There you lose 5%. Sorry, you lose 10%. Well, card is 30 saw, and you look 3 saw, that's 10%. When we say that over here you lose such a large amount, talking about it's still in its husk. Then I'm going to the in the husk, or then you lose the husk because the wind blows, you lose the husk and everything else. Well, the oida she'enu kalif and rice that is not peeled, then shleisha sawing the kur. There also you have 10%, but our Mishnah is talking about rice that's already peeled, as we said before. The husk could be removed. How could if you made a measure? The same thing applies to every card. In other words, Hakalmida means if it's 3 cards, then triple it, and so on and so forth. And also every year, it repeats itself. So 2 years, you double it. It doesn't sort of compound. It's just exactly the same amount is we assume the mice ate it up. They said to Rabbi Yechon in response, he said the mice will only eat one. Our Gemara does not answer the same thing to Shalmi. Shalmi says that if there's only 1 curd, 5 mice will come. If they see the 3 curd, they'll bring a whole bunch of friends over, and therefore they'll eat the same amount. Our Gemara says that the respondent to Rabbi Yechon, it's not just that they eat. If there's a lot there, they just scatter everything around. This is all talking about that you don't know how much you to return because you mix it with your own fruits. If you kept them separate, you put them in a corner, then I don't know what the mice took. It's yours. I haven't touched it, and he's exonerated. So what if he mixed with no peros? Let's see what percentage of what he mixed in was his, and work it out. But stopping man, he used it the whole time. But let's see how much he used it. Like the other comment stop it. Every day he pecked a little bit, took a little bit. He never kept the cheshbon. If there's a lot, then we say it compensates. Means he had 10. When do we say all this? When is Rabbi say that it's enough to compensate the losses? That you measured from your own garden, from your own warehouse, right? When it was dry, and you gave it back to him at the same time. So then we say, what do you call it? Then we say all of these laws that we have over here. You're missing out or something. If you measure from your own goyren, the goyren is the different measures. When you sell, goyren is where you sell from. When you sell from, you use larger, because you sell in bigger quantities. When you sell from your house, usually you sell in small quantities. But they call it by the same name. You'll call a kav, but the kav that you wholesale at is a proper kav, and the one at home is much less. Because usually people take smaller amounts and you don't want to charge, you have to charge something. So therefore you call it a kav, even though it might be only 3/4 of a kav, or 4/5 of a kav. You're not so particular and so on.
Does a kav also mean stam, a measure?
Yeah, but that measure of kav is a certain measure. Yeah, it is, but only when is it? No, not when we're talking over here, Koyer and a Kab. We're doing ratios here, very particular. But then you return from your own house. Then any then you don't have to worry about any losses because really there's extra left over because the measures are not accurate and really there's more than it seems to be. Are we talking about idiots here? In other words, we're saying here that if you have you took 10 kavin in your warehouse, that's where he gave you the store, and you're giving back 10 kavin from your house, no problem, because the 10 kavin in your house is still called kavin, but it's a smaller amount. So therefore, it's all good because you gave back 10 kavin, even though you lost 2.5%. Or let's say you lost 5%, whatever it is. Are we talking about fools? The other Bekaila when he gave him to mine, he gave him big pots. The shock of the took back his malls. We're talking about that. We're talking about when it was dry, he gave it to him. That was to make it so it shriveled, and then he gave it back, as we'll see. He took the Mesa going it back, and then we say, oh, you owe him something because you lost. This measure for measure. It's very similar. And look how much more you lost. More than the natural state of attrition, let's say. You measured in the time when it's summertime when things are shriveled. The he gave back to him when it was the rain time. Then you don't have to give anything back because it's definitely swelled and now it's compensated for that. If it's true what you're saying that it swells, then why doesn't it burst the barrel? I moved the pocket cut. It did happen because in the winter it gets all wet, and even though it's a sealed barrel, it still absorbs the moisture. Not because of it burst. The reason it didn't burst the barrel. You wonder why it doesn't burst? Because it's so tight, it doesn't give any room to swell. There's no room to move. Therefore, it doesn't burst the barrel. Mishnah. And I'll continue. For wine, the natural state of attrition is a sixth. So, but again, we mixed it with your own wine, and now we don't know what it is. So we say that generally up to a sixth is natural for the wine to get lost. It gets absorbed in the barrel. Up to a sixth it gets lost. More than a sixth it doesn't. Up to a fifth. We're seeing more than arguing different kind of barrels. And when oil, if you have 100 loigin, we tolerate a shrinkage of 3. Why? 1.5 is the shmarim that now settles. Before they're all mixed together, now it settles to the bottom, so it's gone. And 1.5 loigin that it got absorbed in the barrel. If you gave him crystal clear shem, in other words, there's no pieces in there, no sediment. Now you don't deduct 1.5 for sediment. And if there's more than, and all you allow is 1.5 for absorption, and there's more than that, you got to pay for it. And when you calculate, you got to give, just allow 1.5, and that's it. If it was old, it was old barrels, which means it's very saturated, then actually because of Bella, you don't deduct the Bella because nothing got absorbed. There's nothing left to absorb. If you sold oil, even if you sold oil, which is clear, I disagree with you. I say that you do tolerate a loss of sediment of 1.5. And we'll explain what the machlekes is. And Abuda says, even if you sell, we're talking now about a pakad, and we assume that 1.5. When you sell oil and you tell a guy, I'm selling you 100 loigin of oil, the buyer knows that 1.5 loigin of that is shmorim. And most of Shem we're talking about you sold to him stop. Like the Rambam says, you didn't tell him. Clearly tell him I'm selling you. According to the Rambam, even if you told him clearly I'm selling you clear, transparent oil, there's still this machlekes. According to Moses Shem, we're talking about you didn't specify. You just said here I'm selling you 100 leggings of oil. You have to lokech accepts 1.5 leggings of that will be shmorim according to Rabbi Yehuda, not according to Chum. So the Gemara.
Very often nowadays the wine is stored in sediment steel vats.
So we're talking about the sediments. We're talking about the sediments. Mezukik only applies to sediments. Yeah, as far as absorption in the barrel, it makes no difference. And we'll see in a minute, different kinds of barrels. Depends on the barrel is how much it absorbs. Talking about the piggy, the first two opinions, whether it's a 6 or 5 in an argument, they cover it with wax, and therefore the mice doesn't absorb so much. With tar and pitch, mice therefore absorbs more. We're talking the kind of the material they used to make the barrel in the first place. One place the barrels absorb more, one place the barrels absorb less. That's have you the Romu Aboy Vitam the Kuza in the place. Oh, this is very interesting. Rabbi Yehuda, remember, this is Rabbi Yehuda who constantly brings us what the Rav said and what Shmuel said. So you can and you can imagine the guy was sat and learned the whole day. And yet, look what it says there. Ba'aseh Rabbi Yehuda, in the city or the region of Yehuda lived, which is Pumpetisa, Ramu Aboyim Vitam, when he moved for Rabbi Shmuel, Ramu Aboy Vitam the Kuzi Bedona, that you would have 48, what do you call it, loyal in a barrel, 48. And then what happened was, so it was a small measure, 48 of this, of kuzi was in a barrel. Kuzi is some kind of measure. Also, you sell a barrel for 6, you buy a barrel for 6 zuzim. So 6 zuzim bought 48 kuza. He sold then every 6 login for 1 zuz. So that means he sold 36 login for the price he paid for 48. Now look at Rashi here. Rashi says in the last line, he had a store. When did he have time to run a store? When he sat and he was not made and he constantly brought the Rabbi Shmuel. When did he have time to run a store? He might have had employees doing it for him and do all that. But here, he himself, he was anyway. It's incredible that he had time to run a business. Says he might have further. Bottom line is, Dol plus in b'shisa b'shisa. So what happened was 36 of the kuzas he sold for 6. I mean, he made his money back. Partial tracer, right? How much is left now? 12 kuzas. Dal tamne, you take off 8 because we said a 6th goes to waste, gets absorbed in the barrel. A 6th of 48 is 8. So therefore, 8 out of the 12 that's remaining, 8 was absorbed in the barrel. Partial abba leaves 4 kuzas. Now 4 kuzas. Now here's the most question here. What bothers the Gemara? Not that he's a profiteer. What kind of businessman is he? Shmuel, his Rebbe Rabbi Yehuda said, there's no, I'll do more than a 6, but up to 6 you're allowed to. Now taking 4 on 48 is a lot less than a 6th. A 6 to 48 would be 8. He's allowed to have up to his profit is what kind of businessman? He's like a shlomil. Not much a businessman. So interesting. Moshe asked that a kind of question. What are you mixing? What kind of business he is? That's how he is. He's not just making big profits. Seems to bother the Gemara that if you can make profits, make it. Especially if you want to sit and learn all day. If you would have made more profit, you wouldn't have to work in the store so much. So the Gemara, but at least till the shtus he could. The Gemara has a kasha. So the Gemara, no, he sells the barrel as well, and he sells the sediment. He sells the sediments, so that's separate. So he sold the barrel separate. He pours out to people. Yeah. Then he has left a barrel. When you bought the first thing when you bought the 48 kuza for 6, you got a barrel with it and the sediment. Now between the barrel and the sediment, he makes a 6 the profit there of 16 and something and a half %, and therefore he can't go any more than that. But he made more because the barrel and the sediment together are worth more. He could the dummy bazaniyosa. So he says here, interesting. He has it's net. When we say shtus, it's net profit, and he has wages as a worker. What's this? Bazaniyosa. That's a few pshatim. One of the pshatim is you have to have a salesperson standing out there with a megaphone and yelling out, come buy wine, come buy wine. Yeah. So therefore, that costs money. So when we say I'll make more than 15.5, interesting, because 15.5% net profit is a very healthy profit. If you look at the stock market, all these public companies, you look at let's say Coles, and they're talking about their monopoly, whatever. You see that their whole net profit is less than 3%, and we call them parasites and everything else. But that's not profit. Net profit. Let's say is very little. Talking about it further, that if it was clear oil, then you don't deduct the sediment because there's no sediment. But what about but wasn't it? You're saying it sounds like you don't take any absorption. But okay, there's the sediment. What about the fact that it absorbs as well? We're talking about over here that these are old barrels, and And because all battle is so angezapt, they're so saturated with oil, there's nothing left for them to absorb. Abayim, I feel tamer shalom is up and keep the tone. Even you don't have to cover the pitch like you just said, but once it's saturated, it doesn't belay anymore. Because even if it does go in, but it pushes others out, so whatever it goes in is replaced. Yeah, and even if it pushes some out, whatever comes out goes back into the oil. That when you sell, the same thing applies. Abaye says, when you want to analyze what's going on here, the dividend according to Yehuda, what's the machlekes? According to Yehuda, mutter la'adav shmarim. According to Yehuda, the owner is allowed to take the shmarim and stir it in and make it cloudy and mix it all together. And when I sell you oil, I'm selling you with a sediment. I'm allowed to do that. Talking about a case where he didn't specify that I'm selling you clear oil. I'm selling you oil. So he has every right to go ahead and mix the sediment into the oil. And then what would be the loket can't have any tinus because I sold you oil and here you have your oil, including the shmarim. 100 like the divrei chachamim, and according to the chachamim, also la'ad shmarim. And he explains, according to chachamim, you're not allowed to mix in the shmarim, so therefore, when you say oil, it means allowed to mind the shmarim. The shmarim is settled on the bottom. So now the David Abihuda Mutala you're allowed to behind the title Makabel Domale. That's why we say to the Kech, you accept it. Domale, he said to me, if I wanted to mix it in before I gave it to you, couldn't I mix it in? So you got your 100 leggin, including the Shemarim. It's a Hashanah, even though I didn't mix it in, nevertheless you accepted it, and therefore I'm giving you 98 and a half leggin of clear oil. And you accept that 1.5 Shemarim, it's too bad, and you keep it separate. Let him say, let the Makabel go tie it back to him and say, look, if you don't mix it together, no, I can sell the whole oil as 100 leggin. But now you give me a sediment separate in a separate keli, my avile. Exactly. What do I do with that? The Gemara says, my avile lechude I can't sell it on a separate all on its own. The Balabai, more answer, the Balabais came. We're talking about who's buying it. Not a merchant, but a balabas. The nichele betzola. He's happy to be meichel the 1.5, so he can have clear oil rather than having polluted, oil with all that sediment in there. So he's more than happy. Why can't he argue the lekeach to the meiche? The fact is you didn't mix it in. You're meichel me, and you were supposed to give me 100 of clear oil because you didn't mix the sediment. It means you meichel the sediment. As Rabbi Yehuda, time made is consistent. Lesser, he doesn't believe in this whole concept of from his actions we say that he's meichel. Now we learn meichel is a tzemed lemachal bakar. In a place we'll see in the Gemara later. We'll see in the Gemara that there's some people most people call tzemed the yoke, and the bakar the cattle. But some people refer to the tzemed as a package deal. You're selling the bakar of the tzemed. So we want to know what you sold when you said give me a tzemed, and and this guy thought he's getting a bakar with it, and then he only got a tzemed. Can he have a taina? So it says again, if we made a tzemed, you don't get the cattle. Mochel baka said you get the cattle, the cows or the ox. He didn't sell them the yoke. Rabbi Yehuda says no. In other words, if this guy paid, Rabbi Yehuda says, look at how much he paid. Now this guy paid $200 for a tzemed. Nobody sells a tzemed for $200. It's $50. Must be the bakar. And yet Rabbi Yehuda and Chacham is saying no. If he said tzemed, it's tzemed. He paid a lot more. He was meichel. So that Chachamim say from his actions we interpreted that he's meichel. Rabbi Yehuda says no such thing has been meichel. So according to meichel, you can't say the fact that he didn't mix his arai that he was meichel the sediment. Action doesn't mean that at all. Kate said, I'm giving here. No, here's an example. That okay. But still significant enough that the cake will have tinus. If it's so insignificant, the cake wouldn't be standing there and having tinus. It's significant enough. I'm like, what is it? I'm like, for example, said something for $200. How do we do it? And it's a massage. Nobody sells $200. Is that what? Exactly. We don't say that he was meichel because he didn't mention the word bakar. The Chamsa ain't a lamaraya. Why not? Chamsa, we will say that he was Michael. The guy you gave $200 happy. Yeah, he's happy to pay. No, so that explains Rabbi Yehuda. That's why that you knew that I could have had the right to mix in the sediments, and therefore when I gave you 100, you meant 98 and a half. However, Liva Chachamim also allows mixing the shmorim. So they've not allowed mixing the shmorim. So therefore, when he says 100, he expects 100. Behind him, he boys a little bit of a show off. If you want to mix the sediments, now, would you allow? You're not allowed to mix sediment. So therefore, I expect translucent oil. I expect full transparent oil. I want 100 lugim. I never accepted less than 100 because that's what you said you're giving me. The sword is just the opposite. I'll say that's opposite sword. You're allowed to mix in the sediment. So how come we say that the guy, when he gets 100, he wants a full 100? Behind the time of Lemekabel, he said, we hold the Mechila. The fact that you didn't mix it in means that you might me the sediment. So when you said 100 and you didn't mix in the sediment, I want 100. Look, don't me 98 and a half. I want 100. You could have mixed the sediment, but you didn't. That means you might me. What's Rav Yehuda? The Dib Rav Yehuda also allowed a shmari. According to Rav Yehuda, you're not allowed to mix in shmarim behind the time Makabel. This is what Makabel Domley says to him. He says to him, if you wanted to mix it in, this is what Lekech says, that you're not allowed to go ahead and to mix it. Kabalti. Sorry, the Meicher says to Lekech, look, if I want to mix the sediment in, I'm not allowed to mix it in. I'm not allowed to mix it in. Now, my whole profit is the sediment. It seems in a case where he's making very little profit, because we said before up to 6, this is far less. But it's tasted this way. His whole profit is the sediment. So therefore, how am I going to make business? How am I going to make money? I'm not allowed to mix the sediment in. I'm stuck. And if I'm going to sell you 98 and a half thing for, as if it's 100, I make no money. Kibula Kabal, the Zovan, if you're not going to accept it, Zovan, Zabin, if I'm going to have to give you 100 loygan pure, I'm not making any money. My whole profit is in this sediment. Zovan, Zabin, somebody buys and sells for the same price. So the price of 98 and a half is the price that I pay 100. Is Tagra, and you can ask a better question. We just made fun of Rabbi Yehuda on top of the page that he wasn't making 15.5% profit. Here we're saying making 1.5% profit is already happy. Anyway, no, unless that's because Rabbi Yehuda should be sitting and learning. And if he wants to do a little bit of business side, he should make good profit to justify why he's in business. He can learn. Okay, maybe.
People sell smaller amounts. You need to buy margin. These guys are selling barrel loads.
That could be okay.
They're working on 1.5% margin.
We learned whether you're a buyer, whether you're a mafkin, you give it over to someone to mine for you. They have the same din regarding the scum that's on top. The little skin and other pieces that float to the top have the exact same din. What do you mean have the exact same? In what way? Just like a buyer. Will not accept the scum as part of when you said you give me 100 loygan. I want 100 loygan minus the skin on top. Is mafkin nabila mekabel kotim. So when you give it back to the mafkin and you mix it with your payers and all that, you have to calculate. You cannot give him back the scum on top. But let him say to them, "What do you want from me? It's my fault that you have cut him on top." That's a natural thing. Just like a mafkin is mekabel kotim. When you buy oil, you know that there's going to be some scum on top of the top, and that's part of your 100 logging, whether you like it or not. Says the Gemara, me mekabel. You tell me the mekabel that the kech is accepting of the kotim. But we don't say the din of shemen okur that you lose out if there's a little sediment mixed in. Only when it comes to a moichet, to a seller, because he accepts 1.5 logan is made up of sediment. So now instead of getting 100 logan, even though I'm paying for 100, I'm getting only 98 and a half. And therefore 98 and a half is net 98 and a half. And if 1.5 shmodim gets lost in 100, there's no room for scum. It's the skin on top of the pieces that float to the top, all that garbage. Yeah, so like Kashi. If it gave him money, Betishrei, Tishrei is much cheaper, because Tishrei time is the oil is still all cloudy because you just picked it and everything else, and they've oil. You expect all that junk and everything else in the oil. So if you gave him money at Tishrei because shaku minei benissen, and you collect in Nissen, kimida Tishrei, but you're paying the cheap price of Tishrei, you anticipate to have this come. You anticipate to have shmoni. Oh, but it's not that's true. But for the real. If you're buying it now and paying the price of today, which means you expect it to be crystal clear that the sediment has fallen to the side, and you're paying a lot more, then you don't expect to have any conflict. It's kimid nissen. Says the Mishnah. We'll just do the Mishnah and we'll do the Gemara tomorrow. Hamafkid chavis eitz chaveda. If Reuven stores a barrel by Shimon, now there's two kinds of cases in the Mishnah, and the Gemara will analyze this. One is if I take something from you to mind, and I'm a yachid, I put it in a closet, and I say, this is yours. It's as if the closet belongs now to the owner of this object. We'll see in a second. And lo yachid means I didn't tell you where to put it. That means my whole house now becomes like your place, but there's no real specific place that is yours. So the Mishnah highlights that, which l'chayda is totally irrelevant to the cases in our Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to discuss that. Mishnah. Case number first, this is the Reisha, and the Sefer which seems to contradict each other. Reisha. Reuben gave something to deposit something by Shimon, Shimon did not set aside a place. Now, when you mine something, you have absolutely no right to use it for your own purpose. You're a Shemei Mechilim, you have no right to use it for your own purpose. So, but what did was Vitiltla. You moved it. And then Minishtabra. While you moved it, what's in a minute? It broke. Now, you're not allowed to move it. You're shaleach yad, and once you move it, you're responsible for anything. Even though you're shemei chinim, since you did something now illegal, you breached your duties. You're responsible for everything, even accident. But what happened was, it depends. Depends when it broke. If it broke while you were holding on to it, again, it depends. Litzarcha, use it for your own purpose. You're a gana. You moved it because, let's say, it was sitting on a precipice and you had to move it because it's about to topple over and whatever is going to get ruined, and you decide to move it for its benefit. Then it's not your fault. But after you replaced it, then it broke. You never told the owner that you took it in the first place. It doesn't matter. You don't need das bailim. Remember, had a macheki by Aved if you need to when you put return it. If you don't need das bailim. What about Yichtova Bailim Mokum? What about if the Bailim set aside a place? You did set aside a place. This is safe for now. The Tiltla, you moved it. Again, you had no right to, as if you stole it. The Nishbra, and it broke. Bain Mitach here it says, whether it broke while you were holding on to it. Bain Mishahinicha, whether you put it back and it broke tomorrow. No turning. You moved it for your own purpose. Chayiv. So here it says, if you moved your own purpose, even after you returned it, we're going to hold you responsible. Before we said, and the only difference in the Reisha Sefer, in the Reisha, you did not what do you call it? Set aside a place for it, and we say that once you return it, you're exempt. And here we talk about you did set aside a place, even after you return it, you're chayiv. What's going on here? What's the feeling? You just set aside a place. This set aside a place. It seems a steer in the Mishnah. It seems the first part of the Mishnah follows Rabbi Shmuel. You don't need the owner's awareness, so you return it, because he wasn't where you stole and took in the first place. And the safe is Rabbi Kiva. That's all that's Bailim. What's going on here? That's what we'll discuss. The tzarcha pot, if you took it for the benefit of the keli, then you pot it because that's part of the duties of a shomer. Exactly. We'll stop picking our Marjo's so we'll start 7:10. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Gary, I heard you did a tremendous job. So have a good
I knew you'd say that regardless of what you heard.